Hey there, folks. I'm Mark, in affiliation with Spectrum Pulse, and it looks like this week is where things finally maybe get back to normal on Billboard Breakdown. I don't remember. I mean, there is a part of me that wants to say this is the week where everything's maybe getting normal, but I also think I've been saying that so much about the Hot 100 because I've been desperately seeking some vestige of normalcy or stability, and the Hot 100 has had it in the past. Although this week, I would say it got kind of close. There's a lot of new songs, but they're more filling in the gaps from the last Youngboy Never Broke Again album bomb. And for the rest, well, okay, let's start with our top 10, where the entire top 5 is very much firmly in place, which is kind of a surprise that We Don't Talk About Bruno by the Encanto cast is holding at number 1. The streaming, it's still monstrous, and the sales are great, so radio is effectively irrelevant with this. And that did kind of surprise me, that Easy on Me by Adele could not retake the top. But the sales and the streaming, they're kind of stagnant, and despite ruling radio, it's now actively in free fall, so it's at number 2. Now, does this open up a space for Heat Waves by Glass Animals, which is not that far behind on radio and is actually better on streaming? Well, maybe, but I kind of doubt it. The streaming margin hasn't eclipsed the radio margin, and it is weaker in sales, at least for now. It does hold over Stay by the Kid Laroi and Justin Bieber at number 4, which is tumbling across the board, and that unfortunately opens the door for Super Gremlin by Kodak Black at number 5, which is huge on streaming and is now picking up the radio to match. But I'd argue the better competition is ABCDEFU by Gale up to number 6. Streaming might be slowing down, but sales are solid and she's absolutely surging on the radio. This could at some point likely make the top 5. Not exactly surprising that it blew past Shivers by Ed Sheeran at number 7. Despite better sales and streaming, you would expect the radio to be wavering a little there, and with the rise of Surface Pressure by Jessica Darrow to number 8 on streaming and sales, I'd say it's vulnerable. Now, all this not back Pushin' P by Gunna and Future featuring Young Thug to number 9. The streaming seems to be slipping a little bit, and the radio isn't quite moving fast enough to catch up. And that takes us to an unlikely return to the top 10, Need to Know by Doja Cat, which is here because the radio run has been surprisingly good, even if the song has little else. And that takes us to our losers and dropouts, the majority of which were, again, Youngboy Never Broke Again, although Have Mercy by Chloe looks like it's going to be out, having never quite blown up the way you think it would have, along with Happier Than Ever by Billie Eilish, which takes its natural exit. And honestly, we don't have that much in the way of losers. Off the gains from last week, Cold December by Rod Wave crashed down to 62, and for Youngboy Never Broke Again, Fish Scale slid to 99, and No Switch fell to 83 off its debut. And from there, Too Easy by Gunna and Future, it's leaving again at 76, and Easy by The Game and Kanye West is at 98. Expecting this to be gone soon, good riddance. Now, I do think our returns are kind of interesting, because while you got a couple of the rebounds, my favorite Doja Cat song with Get Into It Yeah back at 81, along with Fair Trade by Drake featuring Travis Scott, of which I bet becomes a single at some point, we'll probably get a video, but we got a pretty major surge for country here, with Flower Shops by Ernest featuring Morgan Wallen back at 95, and as for our gains, Come Back As a Country Boy by Blake Shelton at 85, Never Say Never by Cole Swindell and Lainey Wilson at 69, Doing This by Luke Combs at 66, and 23 by Sam Hunt getting the big radio push at 53. And outside of that, it's kind of mixed. Iffy by Chris Brown rebounded to 87, Beautiful Lies by Young Bleu and Kalani caught off the debut to 80, Me or Some by Nardo Wick, Lil Baby and Future rose off the return to 78, as did I Love You So by the Walters at 71, but the nice surprise here was Pressure by Ari Lennox steadily rising to 67. Not quite sure what the ceiling is, she's got a surprising amount of radio backing her up, but maybe with just a flash of streaming, this could go somewhere. That would be nice to see. But that takes us to a healthy dozen new arrivals, starting off with number 100, Colombia, Mi Encanto by Carlos Vives. I guess I shouldn't be that surprised it's taken this long for the Spanish language cuts from Encanto to cross over, and here's another one, this time from Carlos Vives, who I've actually covered before, way back in 2016, on that Shakira collab that I honestly didn't think was all that special. Now this has a lot of the same free-flowing bounce, with the bright acoustics playing off some of the accordion, highlighting the Colombian folk influences, and given that all it's really trying to be is a lightweight party song, I guess it mostly works in that lane. Lin-Manuel Miranda's writing is less annoyingly obvious when he writes in Spanish, and that's just as true to me here. Now I do think the textured percussion is a little bit oversold and overemphasized in the mix, but that's relatively minor. Not quite a favorite of mine from Encanto, but it could also get a lot worse. This is fine by me. Number 97, Megan's Piano by Megan Thee Stallion.
I'm a real nigga fantasy. I'll drop dead for a broke nigga, handle me. Do say, this rich bitch energy. Y'all little hoes still drinking that Hennessy. Messy, and I'm sick of y'all trying it. Bitch got receipts, but ain't never finna buy shit.
So am I the only one who's a little bit shocked that it's taken this long to push another song from Something for the Hotties? I know it seemed to be more of like a throwaway project before Tina Snow 2, but still, I was expecting to make a little bit more of a run, but I guess we got this as maybe a single, and yeah, it's good, but it does really feel like a throwaway. The beat is very minimal, with Megan's spare piano melody backing up the trap percussion, and Megan just goes off against all the bitches that hate on her even as she flexes. Basically, it feels like a retreads a lot of thought shit for a fragment that could honestly use a little bit more to stand out, but not in a bad way, as Megan still has a ton of personality and her flows are as sharp as ever. Definitely not as quotable or explicit, which makes me think TikTok virality likely had more to do with this getting charting, but it's not bad either. Good little track. Not great, though. Number 95, The Motto by Tiesto and Ava Max.
Throwing that money like you just won the lotto. We've been up all damn summer, making that bread and butter. Tell me, did I just stutter? That's the motto.
Not gonna lie, when I heard that Ava Max was working with Tiesto, I just got this deep, sinking feeling. Even if the song becomes a minor hit, Ava Max is the sort of pop star who really does not have the clout to avoid being overshadowed by her producer, and that's a quick way to get sidelined for just vocal duties on EDM songs. Maybe that's just me rooting for her, but I've seen this happen before, and I think she's got more potential than that. And while it's probably not a good idea to take the song title from one of Drake's most notorious hits, I did like The Business a decent bit. And good thing about that, because this is just a lesser recreation of that formula. From the bass-heavy house groove to the vocals smothered out in auto-tune to make this sound darker or heavier than it actually is. And that's kind of a shame, because Ava Max's greatest strength is her try-hard personality, not this stiff, pulsating, desaturated house vibe. She's too plastic in order to sell this darker edge. That's a compliment, especially as the party lyrics seem to focus more on her sobriety to push paper rather than actually going to the edge. At least The Business had some coursing swell. This feels way too dry and sterile to make use of the personality that it had. So maybe it's not bad per se, but I can't say I'm not disappointed. Number 94, Infinity by James Young.
I love you for infinity, 'cause I love you for infinity. I love you for infinity.
Okay, this was a single that was released in 2017, and James Young hasn't released anything of note on his own since. He's had a couple guest collaborations, but not much, until this went viral on TikTok last year, ergo it's charting now, and wow, this bassy gurgle with spare drums against the hollowed synths, they sound dated as hell to that era. I can't really blame him for Imagine Dragons and the rest of the commercial core bands driving this sound into the ground, but this is a song that is swallowed up in its own ponderous bombast and slow pace to drive to a proper climax. And I don't know, maybe it's just me with this complaint. I mentioned this back when Mariah Carey had a song with a similar name and concept, but using love in any context of infinity always feels hollow to me. It's like when a franchise goes off into space. There's no further you can go, and you can lose the human scope or face recontextualization, which in this case makes infinity sound as trudging and existentially horrifying as possible. I'm not sure that was intended. So yeah, don't care for this at all. TikTok, let's make sure the hype for this dies down pretty fast. Alright, number 91, Numb Little Bug by Beihold.
Happy, but you don't wanna gotta survive.
Hey look, more TikTok virality, and for an artist I've never heard of before. So Beihold is an indie pop singer-songwriter. She signed to Republic. She's been releasing standalone singles on YouTube with a couple big names backing her production, and this one went viral. And you know, I get why. It's a downbeat, but there's a surprising amount of melodic hooks infused across the piano and the clattering percussion, all of which kind of reminds me a lot of the indie pop that crossed over in the mid to late 2000s. Side note, it is so weird watching that sound slip into the nostalgia cycle, even if the minor key intimacy reminds me a fair bit more of modern bedroom pop. But you know, I do appreciate how tired this song feels, trying to ride the jagged flow of prescription medication, the ups and downs that come with depression, where you do want to feel better, but you can't really get there, so a lot of the day is just trying to get by. And while you could highlight an ironic edge to the brighter melody and pop structure, I think it's more just that it feels kind of small and self-contained in the framing. And there are plenty of acts both then and now that explore this sort of dark territory using a pop structure. Now, it's not on the level of Charlie Adams or Jetty Bones, who play in the sort of pop emo territory, but very few things are, and this actually wound up pretty good as a result. Nice stuff. Number 89, Vice City by XXXTENTACION.
Putting me to the test. They ask me what is happiness, you write it on the check. Or you feel it on the sweat when your dick is in the breast, huh?
Can we stop this? This song was released in SoundCloud in 2014. XXXTentacion himself has been gone since 2018. I don't know why in the nine hells anyone is making a push for this now beyond getting added to streaming services. It feels gross, going down to the very bottom of the barrel when it comes to wringing everything out of X's legacy, especially for this song, which was the only track he didn't delete from that lost mixtape he had. So of course the mixing is terrible. The clanking percussion clips the front of the mix. X's vocals sound rough against that flipped sample, and even if his flows actually show more refinement than many of the records that would follow, it's still very obviously a draft that needed a lot of polish, and when you get to the content, wow, this feels a lot edgier than it actually is. A wallow in life is meaningless nihilism that he thought would sound so transgressive that it might shake his audience, which, I mean, when you're 16, it's not surprising, but for me as an adult, it kind of dampens how much these bars could have actually hit. But even that doesn't overpower how releasing this now feels like leaking a diary or an intimate group chat. It's not good at all, but in a different way compared with a lot of X songs, I'm not cool with this at all. Number 86, Shotta Flow 6 by Choppa.
Man, I'ma shoot at your friend, knock him down and then we do it again. Glock automatic, I change the pen. Pull up hijack and we change the VIN. Don't give a fuck which lane you in. Nothing if you buck, not the brown out your skin.
You know, when I first saw this, I was thinking, oh great, Choppa would be that one guy who would punch back at Youngboy Never Broke Again for all the disses on that mixtape. But that would be a lot more continuity than you should otherwise expect from this, as Choppa goes off on his usual rigmarole with gunplay, fucking, brand names, and a surprising number of actual references and name references off the leaden piano and the bassy trap percussion. I mean, at least the mixing sounds a little more competent this time, and you can't deny that Choppa's faster flows are at least a little bit sharper for the single extended verse. But then you get the line saying that YNW Melly should be free, and that his shooter is off his meds and ergo is more dangerous. I do not trust Choppa to have good opinions on mental health here. And then you get him calling his girl his dog-like Vic. For those of you who might not know, Michael Vick was a former quarterback in the NFL, most notorious for running an illegal dogfighting ring. I don't think there's a way that this implication becomes passable, and the rest of this is not good enough for me to care. Next, number 82, If I Was a Cowboy by Miranda Lambert.
Free, rolling around these towns like tumbleweeds.
I'm honestly not sure where Miranda Lambert's going to take her career next. I wasn't really gripped by the whole Marfa tapes that she had put out, and Wildcard had label interference scribbled all over it. So going into this single, I was really kind of concerned, especially as it looked like Jay Joyce was not working on it, but neither were any of her old production crew. And, you know what's good? but I'm not all that impressed with it, and I feel like I should be given the pedigree. I mean, come on, it's Miranda Lambert. There might be more of a twang to the rickety rollick off the acoustics, off the steel guitar welling up behind her. Maybe a hint of that dream country sound that came from the weight of these wings, especially given how wistful Lambert sounds. The drums are very crisp, but not overpowering or feeling obviously synthetic. Honestly, the closer comparison might be early Casey Musgraves on a textural level. That's normally right up my alley, especially as Miranda Lambert plays with gender signifiers to highlight how her outlaw tendencies might be seen if she had been a cowboy. And you know, the lyrical detail is there. The song's got some smolder, but I don't know, it just doesn't feel as impassioned. It's missing that slightly deeper cutting moment in the writing. It sets the vibe, but it never crystallizes into actually being something more. Don't get me wrong, it's good, and I like that she got away from Jay Joyce. He was not a producer that worked for her, but again, this is not quite great, and I hope whatever comes next might be a little better. Number 79, Peru by Fireboy, DML, and Ed Sheeran.
Even Peru done the para. Tonight in Josie, I'm in Josie. Won't call if you want Josie. I'm not playing with you, I'm not joking. My thought of mom is loaded.
So I knew this was coming, mostly because this song has made a lot of inroads on the UK charts, but you might only know one name on this track, so here's Fireboy DML. He's a Nigerian Afrobeat artist who's picked up a little bit of buzz over the past couple of years, and this is a non-album single that Ed Sheeran hopped on. A little bit odd, but at least he might be using his fame for good here. But I think my point of frustration is how there just doesn't seem to be a lot to this track. Fireboy DML's got a good crooning presence opposite Ed Sheeran, and they got surprisingly decent chemistry for this sort of light party song, but that snare is probably the most dominant element of the percussion with very limited hazy melody to support anything else. And when Ed Sheeran starts stacking up his own vocal leads, well, I don't know, it has the feel of hopping onto someone else's song to make it his own, and that just doesn't feel right with this sort of thing. Again, pleasant enough, but in terms of Afrobeat, it's just not doing it for me. Not bad. I'm not enthralled, though. Number 72, Johnny Ps Caddy by Benny the Butcher and J. Cole.
Like Rocky, catching chickens. I was nice, but they was right when they told me that rapper business. I had 10 bands in my stash when I passed over $500,000.
Well, about damn time. I've been waiting for and predicting the whole Griselda crossover with the Hot 100 for years now. It's not like the crew hasn't gotten all the cosigns and the critical acclaim. They should be here. So I was wondering if and when one of them would get the big guest star boost to notch a proper hit. Props to J. Cole and the Alchemist for getting Benny the Butcher to get to the mark here. I honestly thought Conway would be first. And even more so for what kind of song this is, with a flip sample and very spare drums and 2 extended verses from both rappers with no hook. For I would argue they deliver their A game for what this is. Specifically, I want to highlight just how well connected the bars are in terms of their rhyme structure. You can tell they were competing for the best verse here. And even if the content just boils down to them bragging about their ascendancy and really putting in the work as MCs behind the scene, they're both really damn good at it. It's believable, it's credible. I don't often say that with J. Cole. Now, I will say I do wish this had a little bit more of a pop structure, if only because I know the longevity of a track like this at radio is by no means guaranteed. But in the meantime, this is pretty great stuff. I'm happy it's here. Check it out. Number 57, High by the Chainsmokers.
It's like we go through the same shit every night. You always swear that it's gonna change, but it never does.
Okay, let me repeat myself. Can we stop this? I have no idea why people still insist on trying to make the Chainsmokers a thing, a solid 4 years after we all seem to stop caring about them. But having sat out the pandemic, it looks like they think they can reclaim their position, and wow, you can tell they've been listening to a lot of Post Malone at his poppiest, down to the flattened guitar textures, the cheap-sounding trap snares, the stale back-and-forth bad relationship with passing drug references, and every single vocal inflection. So it's probably not a good sign that Andrew Taggart sounds like a low-rent Kid Laroi instead of Post Malone. I don't know why he thought he had the personality or pipes to pull this off. His singing was crap even when the Chainsmokers were at their heyday and were making decent music. But when you tack tack on the drops that feel weirdly static melodically before they opt in for the chipmunk vocals, it has the feel of this duo struggling to mash together their influences with their sound and find anything that could work. The most I'll give it is that it's got an okay bass line that drives into the hook, and the hook can't remotely pay it off. Otherwise, this sounds painfully derivative. And a helpful reminder, we don't need the Chainsmokers anymore either. And finally, number 51, Rumors by Gucci Mane featuring Lil Durk.
Said my name first, he a junkie, he ain't shot his gun, yeah he blame perks. Shot a video and had a shootout in the same shirt.
And speaking of folks I'm not sure we need anymore, look, maybe this is me, I've never fully grasped Gucci Mane's appeal, especially on trapped songs where he really struggles to keep up, but a Lil Durk feature will get him on the Hot 100. And you know, credit to them, this is not that bad. I still think that Gucci's the weak link here. You can tell he's struggling a bit to keep up the pace. But you know what, his pot shots at GZ that he does land, they are some punches, and that thick well of synths behind the trap percussion is actually pretty good support for his voice. But I also think Lil Durk just runs away with this. He's got the hook, his callouts feel more detailed and targeted between the trolls, the rappers who can't back up the violence and flexing, and then the women who will lure rappers into a setup where Lil Durk is just trying to dispel the rumors and stick with a less remarkable reality, especially as he really doesn't have time for the petty drama. I'm not gonna say this does anything more than that. The hook kind of lacks that added punch to go over the top. Lil Durk pitches his voice down. I'm not sure it's a good fit. And you can tell this is more a favor to Gucci than anything. But you know, when it comes to this brand of trap, overall it's fine. No complaints. And that was our week. Long ass week, but the best of the worst, they do fall out fast. With the latter going to Vice City by the late XXXTENTACION, sorry, production kills it for me, with dishonorable mention to High by the Chainsmokers. Now the best here, yeah, Johnny Ps Caddy by Benny the Butcher and J. Cole, obvious standout, but honorable mention might be tougher. I'm gonna go with a tie for If I Was a Cowboy by Miranda Lambert and Numb Little Bug by Beihold. Nice little surprise there. And with that, I do not see the next major disruption for a while, outside of that Nicki Minaj Lil Baby collab, so we might get some breathing room here, we'll have to see. But until then, I'm Mark, you're watching Billboard Breakdown, affiliated with Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.